What if the most dangerous places in America aren't where you think they are? In 2025, rising crime rates, economic collapse, and social unrest have turned some cities into hidden danger zones, where safety is a luxury and violence is routine. This video uncovers the 10 most dangerous places in the US, using real stats, shocking trends, and stories you won't believe. So, without further ado, let's dive into the list. Number 10, Chicago, Illinois. Now, we all know Chicago has a certain reputation, but in 2025, the numbers back it up. The city recorded just over 620 homicides in 2024, and violent crime is still one of its most pressing issues, with a rate of 1,590 per 100,000 residents. That's over 4 times the national average. But hold on, because this isn't about painting the whole city with one brush. Chicago is a tale of two cities. Downtown, beautiful, bustling, full of tourists snapping selfies by the bean. But neighborhoods like Inglewood, Garfield Park, Austin, and West Pullman, that's where the real trouble brews. In some of these areas, homicide rates are so high that even ambulance crews wait for police escort before entering the scene. Gun violence is the leading threat here. In 2024, Chicago logged over 2,900 shooting incidents, and about 83% of homicides were committed with firearms. The city has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, but illegal guns? Still flowing in like it's Black Friday every day. And let's not forget about carjacking. More than 1,700 reported cases last year alone. So what's feeding the chaos? It's a cocktail of historic segregation, economic inequality, and yes, police-community tensions that just won't go away. In fact, nearly 30% of Black Chicagoans live in poverty, compared to just 7% of white residents. That kind of disparity is a breeding ground for desperation. While Chicago PD has increased patrols and installed thousands of surveillance cameras, response times in high-crime areas still hover around 14 to 17 minutes. And in some emergencies, that's the difference between life and death. The city's new mayor in 2025 has promised sweeping reforms, but residents in some neighborhoods say they've heard that song before. Chicago is a city of resilience, no doubt, but it's also a city still trying to outrun a shadow that just won't fade. Stay alert if you visit, especially if you're headed anywhere west or south of downtown. Number 9, Little Rock, Arkansas. Little Rock, known for its southern charm and historic civil rights legacy. But in 2025, it's also known for being one of America's most dangerous cities. The violent crime rate here, a chilling 1,416 per 100,000 residents, more than 4 times the national average. When even your city's name sounds friendly but your crime stats look like a horror movie trailer, you've got a serious problem. This spike isn't new. In fact, Little Rock has been climbing the crime charts for the past 5 years. In areas like Wakefield and South End, police report near-daily shootings, frequent aggravated assaults, and carjackings that are up 27% from 2023. Murders in the city totaled 84 in 2024, a grim figure for a city with fewer than 200,000 people. So why is this happening? A toxic mix of poverty? Over 20% of residents live below the poverty line. Crumbling public schools and a deep gang culture is fueling the chaos. In 2025, the Little Rock Police Department reported an active presence of over 30 gangs, some with national affiliations and access to military-grade weapons. A local community leader said, "It's like living in 2 cities, one that smiles at tourists and one that bleeds at night." Efforts have been made. There's a $15 million Safe Streets initiative in play, including youth mentorship and curfew enforcement. But so far, results are minimal. The city's police force is underfunded and stretched thin, and many crimes go unsolved. For residents, safety is no longer assumed. It's something you fight for daily. Number 8, Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland might have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but in 2025, it's also playing a dangerous tune when it comes to crime. The city's violent crime rate sits at 1,588 per 100,000, putting it firmly in the top tier for U.S. urban violence. That's over 4 times higher than the national average, and the numbers aren't going down. The most affected neighborhoods include Kinsman, Houff, and Glenville, areas that have become synonymous with shootings and gang activity. In fact, Howe alone accounted for 23% of the city's homicides in 2024. Total homicides for Cleveland that year? 145 murders, most of them involving firearms, and 2025 is on pace to match or exceed those numbers. So what's driving this? A deadly cocktail of economic stagnation, racial segregation, and a failing education system. Nearly 29% of Cleveland's population lives below the poverty line, and the city has lost thousands of manufacturing jobs over the past 2 decades, turning once bustling industrial areas into ghost towns. With limited opportunities, young people are increasingly turning to gangs, which offer money, status, and sadly, short lifespans. Even more alarming, the Cleveland Division of Police is currently operating at 68% of its ideal staffing level, leading to response delays of 10 to 15 minutes in high-crime neighborhoods. There's also a long history of mistrust between residents and law enforcement, making community cooperation scarce. Despite over $40 million being funneled into social services and crime prevention over the past 3 years, Cleveland still feels like a city fighting a war on 2 fronts, crime and disillusionment. Number 7, St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis has been clinging to the most dangerous cities title like it's an Olympic medal. And sadly, in 2025, it's still in the running. With a violent crime rate of 1,743 per 100,000, the city continues to suffer from long-standing issues with gun violence, gang rivalries, and inadequate policing. The epicenter of this chaos? North Street Louis, especially neighborhoods like Fairground and Jeff Vanderloo, where police report a disturbing concentration of violent activity. In 2024 alone, St. Louis reported 174 homicides, and the majority occurred in just 15% of the city's area. It's not a citywide epidemic. It's hyper-localized urban warfare. One key factor? The city's police force is short nearly 300 officers, and budget gaps have caused long delays in case investigations and response times. According to a 2025 audit, average response times in North St. Louis now hover around 17 minutes. That's long enough to finish an episode of your favorite crime drama while living in one. Layered on top of this are extreme racial and economic divides. The city remains one of the most segregated in the country. In fact, a 2025 study found a 20-year life expectancy gap between white residents in the Central West End and black residents in North City. Poverty in St. Louis affects about 23% of the population, and job opportunities are slim outside of the medical and academic sectors. Efforts like the Cure Violence Initiative have brought some results, particularly in youth outreach. But the city is still struggling to get ahead. Until those systemic issues are addressed, the bullet-ridden reality of St. Louis won't be changing anytime soon. Number 6, New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans might be the city of jazz, parades, and po' boys. But in 2025, it's also grappling with a violent crime rate of 1,821 per 100,000, making it one of the most dangerous urban centers in America. The Big Easy? More like the Big Uneasy. In the past year alone, the city has seen over 190 homicides, with more than 75% involving firearms. The neighborhoods most affected, Central City, 7th Ward, and St. Roch, have become hotspots for gang activity and drug-related violence. In fact, according to the NOPD's crime heat map, certain blocks in Central City have a 1 in 12 chance of being the scene of a violent crime. What's fueling this wave of violence? A toxic trifecta of poverty, systemic racism, and under-policing. As of 2025, New Orleans police are working at just 62% of their full staffing capacity. That's fewer than 950 active officers for a city of nearly 400,000. Response times in some neighborhoods have reached 18 minutes, and trust in the police is at an all-time low, especially after recent misconduct scandals. Even more troubling is the city's property crime rate, now at a jaw-dropping 5,082 per 100,000 residents. Car thefts, home invasions, and burglaries are so frequent that locals have jokingly nicknamed their car alarms city lullabies. Despite heavy investment in security tech like street surveillance, ShotSpotter sensors, and mobile patrols, New Orleans still can't shake the deep-rooted inequality that fuels its crime wave. For many residents, it's a city that never sleeps, not because of nightlife, but because of fear. Number 5, Baltimore, Maryland. Friends, Baltimore is the kind of city where history oozes from the brick row homes and jazz riffs through the streets. But don't let the charm fool you. In 2025, Baltimore remains one of the most violent cities in America, with a violent crime rate of 1,895 per 100,000 residents. That's more than 5 times the national average. This isn't just a tough neighborhood or two. This is systemic. The hardest hit areas include Sandtown, Winchester, Cherry Hill, and Park Heights, where police presence is heavy, but violence is heavier. In 2024, Baltimore recorded 276 homicides, with most linked to turf wars and illegal drug trades. And get this, over 89% of those homicides were committed with firearms. That's a level of firepower that even local police admit is nearly impossible to keep up with. So, what's driving this madness? It's a toxic brew of generational poverty, nearly 23% below poverty line, failing public schools, and decades of distrust between law enforcement and the community. The Baltimore Police Department is under federal oversight due to past civil rights violations, and in 2025, they're short over 500 officers. That's left response times creeping over 16 minutes, with residents often saying they rely more on luck than the law. Despite major programs like Safe Streets and community mediation centers, retaliation shootings continue to spike. In some neighborhoods, funerals are so frequent that local churches have dedicated teams just to handle trauma counseling. Baltimore isn't just dangerous, it's exhausted, stretched thin, and in urgent need of deep reform. Number 4, Detroit, Michigan. Detroit may be rebuilding its downtown skyline and opening trendy cafes, but don't let the gentrified curtain distract you. Danger still lurks in many corners of the Motor City. In 2025, Detroit's violent crime rate sits at a jaw-dropping 2,062 per 100,000 residents, putting it in the top 3% nationally for homicide, robbery, and aggravated assault. The neighborhoods most impacted? Brightmoor, Fitzgerald, and East English Village, areas where police sirens are practically background music. In 2024, Detroit recorded 308 homicides, a 7% increase from the previous year. The homicide clearance rate is only about 51%, meaning nearly half of all murders go unsolved. Detroit's economic comeback hasn't reached everyone. Nearly 31% of residents still live in poverty, one of the highest rates in the nation. Many neighborhoods have block after block of abandoned homes, with illegal activity tucked into the shadows. The opioid crisis is also ravaging the city, leading to more violent disputes over territory and cash. Despite a shrinking population, down to just over 630,000 residents, the crime per capita remains sky high. Detroit's police force, though better funded now than a decade ago, still struggles to cover such a large, sprawling area. Officers respond to over 200,000 emergency calls per year, and many residents say the system feels like a lottery. Sometimes you get help, sometimes you don't. Detroit's transformation is real, but it's 2 cities in one: the polished resurgence downtown and the still struggling neighborhoods beyond Woodward Avenue. If you're visiting, you might enjoy a fancy gastropub downtown. Just don't take a wrong turn without checking the neighborhood map twice. Number 3, Birmingham, Alabama. You heard that right? Birmingham, Alabama, the Magic City, ranks as the 3rd most dangerous place in the U.S. in 2025. With a violent crime rate of 2,106 per 100,000 people, Birmingham is living in the shadows of its own criminal storm. The city logged 154 murders in 2024, and the pace in 2025 suggests a similar or even higher figure. Worse still, these crimes are not random. They're concentrated in neighborhoods like Ensley, Eastlake, and Kingston, where drive-by shootings, home invasions, and armed robberies are tragically common. What's going on? Well, about 27% of Birmingham residents live below the poverty line, and unemployment in certain zip codes exceeds 11%. The city has also seen the emergence of smaller, decentralized gangs that are harder for police to track and infiltrate. These groups often engage in shootouts over perceived disrespect or territory on social media, turning digital beef into real bloodshed. Compounding the problem, Birmingham PD is short-staffed by over 200 officers, and public trust is shaky at best. In fact, a 2025 local survey revealed that nearly 40% of residents wouldn't call the police even during an emergency due to fear of escalation or no response. Some residents report waiting 20-plus minutes for help, by which time the danger is long gone, or tragically, already done. Efforts like Operation Safe Summer and Cure Violence have made dents, but the roots are deep here. Birmingham's legacy of racial segregation, economic disinvestment, and political dysfunction means the city's wounds are old and still bleeding. Number 2, Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis may be the birthplace of blues, but in 2025, it's also become a hotbed for crime that's anything but soulful. With a violent crime rate of 2,421 per 100,000, Memphis is now second only to one other city in overall danger. And unfortunately, that's not a badge any city wants to wear. The areas in crisis include South Memphis, Binghamton, and Fraser, where gangs dominate and carjackings are almost daily occurrences. In 2024, Memphis reported 398 murders, a record high, and more than 80% of those cases involved handguns. Even more shocking, the city's juvenile arrest rate has risen 19% year over year, indicating more teens are getting sucked into violent lifestyles. Memphis is also reeling from a police staffing disaster. After the Tyre Nichols tragedy and ongoing protests, the Memphis Police Department saw a wave of retirements and resignations, leaving them operating at just 61% capacity. Many calls for help go unanswered for upwards of 25 minutes, and trust in law enforcement is at a low point. The poverty rate in Memphis hovers around 26%, with major inequalities in healthcare, housing, and education. Combine that with poor lighting, abandoned homes, and a drug market that's alive and well, and you've got a city in crisis. One local activist put it bluntly, Memphis feels like it's on its own, like we're living in a different America. Despite high-tech surveillance and community outreach programs, Memphis is struggling to contain the damage. In some neighborhoods, gunfire is heard so often that locals have started naming their favorite firework or gunshot bingo cards. You can laugh or cry, but that's the tragic reality. Number 1, Monroe, Louisiana. And here it is, number 1. The most dangerous place in America in 2025. Monroe, Louisiana. Not Chicago. Not Los Angeles. This relatively small city of just under 50,000 people has earned the top spot with an eye-popping violent crime rate of 2,892 per 100,000 residents. Wait, you're probably asking, how does a town most people have never heard of top this list? Let's break it down. In 2024, Monroe reported 56 homicides, which may not sound like much, until you realize that's more than 10 times the national average per capita. Armed robberies and assaults are off the charts. Neighborhoods like South Monroe and Booker T are essentially danger zones after dark. Monroe has some of the highest poverty levels in the country, with nearly 39% of residents below the poverty line, and youth unemployment at 18%. The public school system is chronically underfunded, and community services are almost non-existent. There are fewer than 200 active police officers for the entire metro area, and the city's clearance rate for homicides? Just 42%. The police chief even admitted in a recent press conference, "We're overwhelmed. We need help. We can't keep up." You know it's serious when law enforcement is sounding the alarm themselves. Even local business owners are closing early or moving out altogether, citing safety concerns. In Monroe, survival isn't just about opportunity, it's about staying alive. And that's why this small Louisiana city now wears the unfortunate crown of the most dangerous place in the United States. America's danger zones are real, and they're closer than you think. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Stay sharp, stay safe, and catch you in the next one.